Visualize a young, carefree girl. Perhaps she's playing with her friends, laughing, running around oblivious to what's going on in the world, unaware that as the minutes pass, young girls, much like herself, are suffering from multiple different forms of violence throughout the world. Childhood is the happiest days of our lives, though sadly, for many young girls, it ends far too soon. I am 14 and I hate it when I'm walking on the beach or on my road or on the back of the bike, literally in any public space, and men, like 3 times my age, come up to me and call me sexy or ask me if I'm single and sometimes even try to touch me. I don't want to have to be afraid to walk down my own road because I know they are going to shout at me. And I don't think anyone deserves to live with that fear. 1 in 6 women has been the victim of attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. 9 out of 10 victims of rape are female. 84% of victims under the age of 18 are female. Because of this, my interests focused on women and girls. Practically every girl who has gone through puberty experiences some form of harassment. Perhaps it was catcalling, or possibly someone grabbed her as she walked. Maybe she's even been the victim of an even more serious sexual assault. This is an issue that concerns girls in every single country. In Pakistan, for instance, a girl is considered a woman as soon as she hits puberty, around 12. She is old enough to be married and possibly raped by her husband, with no defense from the police and no one to turn to for help. However, we should not fool ourselves into thinking that this is an issue that only concerns countries and cultures removed from us. It is an issue that affects virtually every young woman on this planet, from Switzerland to Japan, Canada to Uruguay, Egypt to Indonesia. This is an incredibly serious issue that has so many different factors to it and has raised so many difficult questions. Most of all, it got me thinking, why? Why do people think it's okay to sexually harass one another? Why do most victims shut down and not take action? Why do only 1% of perpetrators actually get convicted? Did you know that rape also has a cost? In the USA alone, rape costs $127 billion a year, more than any other crime. What does the word immigrant make you visualize? What if I told you that thousands upon thousands are young women fleeing sexual violence, such as Carlita, a 13-year-old girl who fled Honduras due to gang violence. She was kidnapped by the Zetas in Mexico, used as a sex slave and forced to be a drug mule for them, until she finally escaped and eventually made it to the US. In Honduras, 95% of crimes perpetrated against women and girls go unpunished. 95%. So perhaps, next time we hear the term immigrant, we should also try to visualize a young woman trying to find safety from the constant threat of sexual violence. The cases I have talked about here represent the absolute worst in harassment and assault, and we are fortunate here at Green School to live in a supportive and inclusive community, which hosts events such as V-Day, an event which aims to empower young boys and girls to help stop the issue of sexual violence. But the reality remains that outside the borders of Green School, women and girls continue to be targets for sexual harassment. So alongside my why question, I began to ask how. How can I do my part to ensure that women and girls feel safe? I took inspiration from a story about Mexican women who are demanding government action against the femicide and sexual violence perpetrated towards them on a daily basis. At this year's International Women's Day, tens of thousands of women chose not to appear in classrooms, stores, offices, and streets to protest the issue of gender violence. This nationwide strike was intended to be a reminder that in Mexico, every single day, 10 women are murdered in terribly violent ways, and hundreds of women are raped, with absolutely no consequences. The non-appearance of women in public spaces was intended to show that the 10 women that disappear by the day are gone forever. The day that followed, the women in Mexico did the opposite. They stormed the streets carrying signs and banners, screaming mantras and anthems to get their demands heard. Demanding for the police to investigate femicides. Demanding for perpetrators of sexual violence to be imprisoned. Demanding equal pay. This was an incredible moment for Mexico, an instant where a country that has long since failed to overcome firmly established machismo and gender-based violence stood up, took action, and demanded justice. Women finally broke the silence and demanded an end to this brutality. The situation in Mexico shows this severity. Women are dying at the hands of men, and as a young woman, I do not want to live in fear. The main idea behind my project is safety. We are tackling what's happening worldwide every single day, while trying to figure out, where does this all begin? No single person can end a huge problem like this, but what if we can start by avoiding places that are reported locations of assault? Hollaback is an app where you can anonymously report a location where you came across any form of sexual harassment. Once you report an incident where you either witnessed or experienced sexual abuse, it appears onto a map. Other people can click onto any reported location of assault displayed on the map, read stories of incidents, and know what streets need to be avoided, which areas are unsafe. This website helps increase awareness and a sense of security. It's also a really great place to share your story, to know that other people understand what you've been through and support you. When I first discovered the existence of this app, I immediately went to check which areas in Bali were reported unsafe. And that's when I found out that Bali didn't have a map set up. And that's when I knew that for my quest, I should create a Hollaback map for Bali. A big part of the initial process of my project was collecting stories to get the map started. I started around green school, doing presentations, one-on-one talks, and sending out surveys to collect data. But still, collecting stories was exceptionally difficult due to the fact that even in green school, no one wants to talk about what they have been through. There were parts where it was stressful. This is a very heavy topic for me. I find it difficult to express myself for the most part, and the fact that people were reluctant to talk was challenging. I spoke to girls my age and some adults, and when school ended, I sent out emails and surveys. Having initially chosen to focus my project on women and girls, I decided to include men and boys in my surveys. I asked them all to briefly explain what happened and how it made them feel. But the difficult part was getting them to think back to where it happened. At first, I thought perhaps they were reluctant to tell me, or embarrassed. But thinking back now, maybe they just don't remember. Many of them were intoxicated with alcohol or were so overpowered by fear that they couldn't focus on anything else other than how to make it stop. In the end, I managed to collect 47 stories, and throughout this process, I felt angry and powerless, but I learned so much. The most important thing I learned is that almost everyone has a personal story of sexual harassment, not just women and girls. It may be something big, or it may be just a minor incident that happened, but everyone has a story. However, the truth is, victims are often too ashamed to come forward. Sexual assault is a very humiliating and dehumanizing act. The victim often feels evaded and defiled, and there is a lot of shame attached to that. Shame and self-blame are almost always results of sexual harassment, because that's just how our cultures and society work. We try to find a way to blame the victim by saying things like, maybe it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been wearing an outfit like that. They shouldn't have had so much to drink. Why were they out at that time of night anyway? Out of 1,000 rapes, 994 offenders will walk free. This signifies that even when the survivor chooses to report, the chances of them acquiring justice are so unbelievably low that many choose not to bring up this subject of trauma and instead stay silent. I think what Hollaback is trying to do is great. Solving the issue of sexual violence is extremely important, but the app is only one perspective on how to end sexual violence. It's trying to make the world a safer place for victims. And as of now, there are 47 stories entered on the map for Bali, and I hope you will join me in spreading the word and populating the map, hopefully making Bali a safer place for the future. And as Angelina Jolie has said, there is no disgrace in being a survivor of sexual violence. The shame is on the aggressor. And as the 1 Billion Rising movement says, we will not stay silent.